Hi, beautiful souls. Sassy Little Hippy here, and I thought I'd try something different and put this in something a little more audible for you so that you could hear my voice and put a voice with the blog that I've been writing. So, this one is the first one in my Chronic Healing Journey blog series, and I hope you enjoy. So, we all have experiences that have helped shape us into who we are today. And while no two journeys are the same, the pain and the struggles that we feel along the way, they often bond us. So that's why I felt compelled to start sharing my story and my journey. Maybe it'll sprinkle some hope, offer some support, or just lend an ear if needed. So part of my story is chronic illness, and while it does not define me, it has tested my boundaries, taken me to deep, dark places, and it's taught me a lot of things about myself that I never would have known otherwise. And through it all, I never gave up hope. I never thought that healing wasn't possible. So with a strong will, decades of patience, and boy was my patience tested, and lots of support from family and friends who were very understanding, I learned to listen to my body and navigate to a better life, but it took me a while to get there. But the story of my chronic health journey, it really starts at the roots of my life. And reflecting back to my childhood, knowing what I know now, I think it's a lot easier to see that all the signs of things to come, they were there all along. But in isolation, they're really not so bad, just a little thing here and there, but as a whole, it really starts to add up. So in early childhood, as young as I can remember, I started having chronic flu-like achiness, and that often resulted in me leaving school early or just asking and begging my mom, please don't make me go to school, I don't feel well. I got labeled as a hypochondriac by teachers and other adults that just thought I was making this up because I was homesick. I was not homesick. I loved my mom, but I wasn't homesick. I also had chronic constipation, and that often left me for hours in the restroom. I mean, there could be like a party. I'll never forget this one. There was a bunch of family over, and they're just having a good old time, and I'm stuck in the bathroom for hours. I'm sweating. I've stripped all my clothes off because I'm so hot. It was just horrible. I was crying, and people kept coming to check on me, but I couldn't leave yet. I know prune juice, that was something that was recommended to us. Ugh, it tasted horrible. I couldn't stand the taste, but it wasn't even working for me. I also had eczema, and it was so extreme that my fingertips, they would dry and crack right at the edge. They would kind of curl up because they were so dry, and if I tried to pull them open, it would actually start pulling the skin away from my fingernail, and as soon as it started doing that, it would dry up under my fingernail to where I almost lost fingernails many times, where they were just hanging on by just a little bit, and so they would bleed. It would burn and sting underwater, and things would stick to my fingers because it was so cracked and flaky. The creams, they did not work. I tried many creams. I remember in 7th grade, I had a best friend that was taking a test for me, writing. I was telling her the answers to write most of the time. And, she was helping write the answers down because I couldn't hold a pencil. So that's how extreme it was. I also got motion sickness all the time, mainly on windy roads. Oof. Long trips, I would just be so nauseous. And no, I did not grow out of it, which is what the doctors said. So my parents, they did their due diligence and brought up concerns with my doctors. They offered a variety of creams, suggestions, expert advice, it's just a phase, trying to help set our minds at ease. But my mind was at dis-ease. It was far from at ease. None of these remedies were working. So late childhood, I still had all of the above, but I had moved on to new stages where I had severe sweet tooth. It was combined with so many people telling me, You need to eat more and fatten up. You're too skinny. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many people told me that. They still tell me that to this day. And that led to this false belief that I could eat whatever I wanted. Also, like in my generation, people just weren't educated on the dangers of sugar. But I was eating a diet rich in sugar and carbs. I mean, I had a huge sweet tooth. I was eating sugar every day. And then I started having intense cramping in the arches of my feet. Oh, it was so bad, especially in the cold weather. When I was in a swimming pool and I was kicking my feet, I'd get the cramps. Like, oh, it was bad. And I mean, I remember being carried out of the pool, and I remember people putting pressure on my feet to like try to get the cramp to bind down. I mean, it was bad. I tried bananas. Guys, that was not working for the intensity of my cramps. In high school, I remember one of my cramps lasted for over an hour. Well, it was in both feet. It lasted for over an hour. In fact, we were in marching band, and everybody was leaving. The game was over. Everybody already changed out of their uniforms. And here I was with people like putting pressure on my feet to try to keep the cramps at bay. I was in tears. It was just bad. I also, thanks to all that sugar, I'm sure, ended up with 7 cavities. And of course, back then, the solution was fill it with mercury. So I walked out of that dentist's office with 7 teeth full of mercury and went on about my merry little life. I'm sure that'll come back to bite me later. What do you think? Extremely heavy and irregular periods. Yeah, as soon as I got my period, I was having it for 2 weeks straight, and then I'd skip a week, and then have it for 3 weeks straight, and skip a week, and have it for 2 weeks straight. And they were extremely heavy. So going to the doctor, I was diagnosed with anemia, and they put me on the pill to regulate, which was great, except then after I started the pill, I started having horrifying cramps. So yes, I am using these extreme words: horrifying, debilitating, blah, blah, blah. This is how it felt. Like, none of this was just small stuff. I promise you, the things that were light and small, they don't even get mentioned in this blog. But these cramps were so bad that I wasn't able to stand and walk. I remember having to be carried out sometimes. I remember spinning circles in the floor, screaming at anybody that came by and saw me. I remember there was one time where I was, oh gosh, I kept, like, any kind of medicine my mom tried to give me, I would throw it up. And I remember she had just changed the sheets in the bed, and I threw up again. And I was in so much pain, and had been for so long because I couldn't even get medicine in me to help it, that I was screaming at her, begging her, just kill me, just end my life. Like, I can't live like this. And my mom couldn't even come back into the room. She had to send my stepdad in to deal with me after that, because it was breaking her heart, and I was not in my right state of mind. So the doctors were recommending just take 6 to 8 ibuprofen at a time every 4 hours. Yeah, just keep doing that. That's fine. Keep doing that. So I did. That was the only thing that really helped keep the pain level bearable so I could get through school, get through the work day. So again, my parents brought up concerns with my doctors, my dentist, my gynecologist. Like, the original set of issues were way less important at this point. The feet cramp and stuff like that, who cared at this point? Because now my monthly cramps and all of that was just a way bigger priority. They were screaming way louder. And so we were assured, this is common for girls her age. It's no big deal. So, they sent me home with pills, bananas, and a mouthful of mercury. That was their solution. Now, moving on into early adulthood, I still had all of the above. None of it went away. For sure, it didn't go away. But then I started having some pains, and I was diagnosed with ovarian cyst. Very nonchalantly, the doctor who came in and was there all of maybe 30 seconds was like, you'll be fine. Just let them burst on their own, and walks out. Like, I felt so violated. I felt so invisible. Like, I didn't even understand cyst. I didn't understand. And so that was just a really bad experience for a young girl to go through. Adding on, I became allergic to dust and pollen. And if you're familiar with the Yellow Carolinas, come spring, oh my gosh, like you don't want to be around if you have any kind of allergies to pollen in the spring. But yeah, it was pretty severe to the point where I was getting sinus infections and I had to get antibiotics. The over the counter stuff would not work. And this started in college. And it got so severe that after all the stuff in my sinuses went on down into my chest, I started having really bad coughing attacks. Like I was choking and like choking on my coughs, choking on the phlegm. I remember being in the car, and whenever these would come on, I would have to pull over and throw up in whatever cup I had around. Like I would feel the thing. I mean, it was just so much stuff coming out. It was bad. So I don't do anything small when I get sick, I guess. But I also started having like stiff knees. That was really odd for me. It was just too painful to bend. I just wasn't able to bend it. So like on hikes, the bends, I always say my bends wouldn't bend. And, I'd be trying to hike up a hill or even down a hill, and I'd have to like swing my legs around because I couldn't bend them. And that lasted for a very, very, very long time. But I think the bigger things at this phase of my life was I started having these chronic pains in my shoulders, my lower back. I was having it like every single moment of every single day. This is when I started to have pain every single day of my life. It wasn't off and on and random. It was like every single day. And I also started getting these sharp shooting pains from the arches of my feet, shooting all the way up my leg, up into my nether regions, and it would cause me to shoot up out of my chair, like in the middle of a meeting, a business meeting. Picture it, we're all gathered around, and I just shoot up out of my chair because the pain was so intense. Like I didn't even have control of shooting up, like it did it for me. And I learned that it was triggered by sitting too long, which would be longer than 10 minutes. Standing too long, it would be sitting on hard surfaces, which like even 30 seconds of that would cause it. Or standing on hard surfaces. So picture like standing on the cement at trade shows. Whew, that was bad. So as a young adult, I mean, I was 25 when I got diagnosed, but I did what I knew best. I went to the doctor, full of tears, full of pain. They took MRIs, all the other tests they could, and basically the last 3 symptoms brought about a new diagnosis, or several diagnoses actually. One was called fibromyalgia. Now at the time, fibromyalgia was a newly recognized disorder, disease, whatever they call it now. Also, they diagnosed me with neuropathy and arthritis, which verdict was out on arthritis. I didn't want to believe that one. I felt like that's what old people get, right? That's what I thought. So my doctor was mystified because he was saying, fibro, this has only been recognized in the American medical community as a real disease for a very short time. It was very new in the community. Prior to that, people just thought it was a fad, that like you just wanted attention, that it was all in your head. And so there was no evidence on tests, right? Like you can't see fibromyalgia on an x-ray or a blood test. So they just didn't want to recognize it really and give it the credit that it was due. And all these poor, mainly women, but many men too, just got labeled as hypochondriacs. And this was typically age 40 or above. So here I was 25 getting diagnosed with something that there's a new pill on the market for. Aha! And this is now why they, are recognizing it in the medical community. This is to my understanding. If I got my facts wrong, hey, blame my doctor because this is what they told me. So here I was at the prime of my early adulthood, age 25, ready to rock and roll in my career, diagnosed with something that middle-aged women get. I was in so much pain every day that at that point, I was willing to do whatever it took. The doctor was offering me a magic pill to solve it all. Well, I tried it. I tried that pill. It was Lyrica. It was new. It didn't work. I tried it for a couple of weeks. I gave it a fair shot, and then I decided, you know what? When I asked my doctor what causes it, they didn't know. So when I asked how to treat the root cause, they didn't know. So I was determined. I want to get to the bottom of this. I want answers. I don't believe my doctor when he says I will live with this forever. I don't accept that. I don't feel like I was innately born into this earth, like, and can't be healed. So I headed for the bookstores because that's where all the knowledge was, right? I would spend hours at a time reading through research on any information I could get my hands on regarding fibromyalgia, this mysterious and invisible disease. But remember, because it was newly recognized, there were very few books and information on that topic at this time. And by the way, the internet was still fairly new. So scouring the internet, AI, none of that existed back then, right? Very limited information out there. So I expanded my research to other topics because it just wasn't finding a lot on fibromyalgia. Started learning more about chronic and autoimmune diseases like chronic fatigue syndrome, more about eczema, more about arthritis. And the books, they were filled with a bunch of research and interpretations and thoughts, plenty of recommendations to try to help manage the pain. That's what our doctors do, though. Like they're trying to help manage the pain. They're band-aiding stuff. They're not getting to the root cause. There was no real documented cure in any of these books. So I was taking a lot of notes, and I started noticing patterns across them. Something deep down told me, like, keep digging, stay this course. You're on to something. Be patient. I was determined to do things my way because I just wasn't happy with the answers that I was getting. So that's really what began my road to discovery and recovery through a holistic approach. So at this early stage of my life, from childhood to 25, I do feel like there were some lessons that I take away from this as I'm reflecting back. And one of them is skinny doesn't mean healthy. Skinny doesn't mean healthy. And also being overweight doesn't mean unhealthy. So like, let's stop just like putting these things in a bucket. Like, we don't need to tell people they're too skinny or too overweight. Like, that's not our place. You don't realize what that's doing to someone's psyche. And that definitely enabled these false beliefs in myself that I could just eat anything I wanted, even as an adult. And I started learning the dangers of sugar because everybody else was judging me on my appearance and commenting on it. And by the way, women, can we stop saying, I hate you, you're so skinny? That is not nice. It is not nice. And if I walked up to someone, I was like, I hate you, you're so fat. Anyway, stop. Just stop putting people down. We need to talk nicer to each other. But my point was, I learned skinny doesn't mean healthy, and I had to, relearn that mentality. I also learned young does not mean invincible. I think we've all learned that at some point in our lives. And I also learned my doctors didn't have all the answers. These trained professionals that went to college and did all this extra stuff, like, they didn't have the answers. But more importantly than that, they didn't have the desire to dig deeper to the root cause. And that's what was most important to me. So the final takeaway was, if I wanted to heal, it was in my hands. So that kind of encompasses the first in my chronic healing series. And I really appreciate you joining me and listening to this audio if you did. If this resonated with you, I invite you to join the Hippie Blossom community. If you know somebody that's suffering with chronic illness, then share this with them because maybe this will resonate with them. And my goal is to help inspire them to go on their own healing journey. There is no one right way to heal. I can't tell them, hey, this is the magic thing I did that solved all the problems. It is a multifaceted, I call it the Trinity approach, but there's a lot of things that go along in it. And I am here to help be an ear if you need it, or bounce off ideas, or help do some research. Like, what do you need to help inspire you on your own healing journey? So if you would like to join me where we can heal, grow, and bloom into the truest versions of ourselves together, I invite you to join me in my community. So until then, keep blooming, my blossoms.